Well, happy new year. It's a completely new year. We are in 2025, and this is the first episode that we're recording for this year. A little bit late. We're into February, so I know it's not socially acceptable to say Happy New Year in February, but here we are. A lot of things have happened. A lot of things have been happening, especially in recovery. It's your first time here. This is long term. This is the podcast where we are talking about recovery, and we're coming at it from the approach of someone who's never had to go through recovery because I've never had an addiction to substances that would have led me down that road. But I think that everybody has some sort of connection, and we can all relate in that we all have something from our past that sort of is, a haunting figure, the monkey on our back that we try to shake off, and we try to move forward and do better things for ourselves. So with that said, there's a lot of things to cover, a lot of ground. And if I was to try to cover all of the things that happened in the world of recovery across the U.S., it would be impossible. If I tried to cover everything that happened just in this region of the United States, it would also be a long day of recording. And also with just Arkansas, which Arkansas has become sort of not only is the place we live, of course, but there is so much being done right here in the state that is setting the precedence for what is happening across the country and how recovery is being approached by organizations and governments, and even teaching how to be a peer support specialist. That it's hard to keep up with. But there are a couple of things that I picked up that I really want to talk about. And number one is just my own personal, sort of experience. If you notice, we're sort of doing another form of this podcast, right? Where before we started off with the really long written sequences, and I used to animate it, and then we had to move forward into a scripted version. But I think we are going to move into this version where I'm sort of just talking off the cuff. These are things that I think about all the time, but I think for the benefit of the show and for the benefit of you, and to get the most information out, that we need to just start recording. Just go and get it out there. So if you are listening on a podcast platform, you can find the video version on YouTube. Please go over there and subscribe. It really helps us. It helps the show. It helps the message get out, and an education in how recovery helps everyone. If you're watching this on YouTube, of course, you can find us across the platforms of every podcast platform, from Apple and Amazon and Google Music. So I do want to start with the beginning of the year, right? That's a good place to start. Most New Year's parties, if you've ever been to like a New Year's Eve party that crosses over into the new year, right, to watch the ball drop. But most of these parties, especially in my experience that I know, sort of revolve around alcohol, right? It's around the drinking hole. So you can have whoever you want at your party. You can have as many people as you can pack in there as you like, but there's always some sort of, even if it's as much as just a glass of wine or champagne, or it's a full keg and people are doing shots. Alcohol is usually involved in these celebrations of going into the new year. You end up waking up the next morning, first morning of the year, and you're regretting your decisions from the night before. And so this year I attended a recovery celebration for New Year's, which was a sober celebration, which is a completely new experience. And I kind of wanted to talk about that a little bit. So it was a recovery organization putting it on, called Level Up, which is a coaching service. It's hard to explain. It's a sort of they coach you through your recovery. They're based out of Oklahoma, but they do a lot of things in Arkansas, like going into different jails and prisons and institutions and helping people go through a curriculum that helps them get on the path of recovery. So they were here and they put on a celebration for the new year and invited everybody that was in recovery in the area to come and celebrate. And it was such a different experience because, of course, you take away that core piece that everybody sort of gravitates around, which is usually the alcohol, right? What drinks are available. And you put people that are not only not drinking, but also they are currently in recovery and putting them all in the same room together. It was an amazing experience because it was something I've never experienced before as a, person. I like to people watch, right? Social psychology was the greatest course I ever took. And it's taught me so much about myself and about other people and how we interact and how we grow our society. And to watch this group of people that are there, a lot of them did not know each other. They just knew that they had a shared common goal or something they were shared in experience in one way or form or another of going through recovery from substance abuse issues. And so it's always a little, awkward whenever you have people that are in recovery coming out to talk to people that they call normies, which is people that don't have substance abuse issues. There's always this, I don't know, there's a part of them that is still trying to figure out where they fit in the world and how to interact and how to talk to these normies. But if you get a huge group of these people together, they don't really even know like how to talk to each other. And so I wanted to go back and tell you a story about the worst New Year's. By the way, this was the best New Year's party I've ever experienced in my life. What I wanted to do, because Brittany, who is the owner of Level Up, reached out, asked if I would come take photographs of the event itself. And I said, of course. And I came and I did it for free, volunteered my time because I couldn't think of any better way that I would want to spend the first day of the year than to donating my time towards something that's a great cause, right? And to helping the people that, this podcast benefits. So I want to take you back to one of the worst New Year's, events I've ever experienced in my life. I can't even remember what year it was. I was either in my young 20s or I was in my upper teens, but so going back a little further, after I graduated high school, I moved to Conway, Arkansas, which is a little bit bigger than a small town, but it was still a small town. And it's much smaller than Little Rock or any of the other highly populated cities in Arkansas. So it is just a bigger version of a small town. But I thought that it was, the city because I grew up in this rural town, in Arkansas. That back and forth between Texas. And so I thought of Conway as, the big city, right? So I moved there because they had, they got TJ Maxx, they got Target, they got, 2 Walmarts. And so that was a city to me. And I was all set to go to college. I was going to go to the University of Central Arkansas. I was going to go for music. I was going to teach music and I was going to create music. I had been, the first chair for tenor saxophone and played in the orchestras at my school and for Arkansas Governor's School. And I was dead set that I was going to make music and teach you how to make music. And so I had my badge, I had everything ready, had my books, all that. And so on the morning of my first day of college, I couldn't make myself get out the door because I had such like a social anxiety of just thinking about talking to strangers, people who I've never met before and having just an offhand conversation, even if it's just that awkward thing where like you hold the door open for somebody that's coming behind you where you never met them before in your life. Like that was just so stifling to me that I couldn't make myself get out the door. And so I ended up dropping out of college, never went to college a day in my life, and moved on from that to I was working at a movie gallery at the time. And so if you know what that is, it's like a video rental store that was kind of in competition with Blockbuster. But I was working and I also was trying to make music with some people and trying to get that off the ground, trying to do more performances. And I don't really recall a lot of how everything happened and why I was living in this apartment with all these people that I had never met before. But somehow we all ended up living together in the same apartments, and a lot of them worked at a Waffle House that was down the street. And I had never been to a Waffle House, and so that was my introduction to go to a Waffle House, was with the people that worked there. And I remember one of the guys who worked there had a mohawk. He was really into punk rock, and so we hit it off because of that. Had a shared love of punk rock music, And he had this, I think it was like a blonde or blue mohawk, and was still working at Waffle House like that. And at the time, this is when, it was just unacceptable in society to have a colored or dyed hair. And especially you couldn't have a mohawk and be out in public. But like they allowed him to do that there. And so I remember one day he came home and he was so just like completely in shreds inside. He was just so distraught, and he was, I don't know, like fighting, but he was just like complaining or like loudly just, it was like almost like grief, right? Almost like losing somebody. And he didn't have his mohawk anymore. His head was buzzed down to the scalp. And he was telling his girlfriend about how she must think that he's such a sellout because he shaved his mohawk so that he could be an assistant manager at the Waffle House, right? So this was an image that he thought that he had to do in order to get that job, which he did. He got promoted, but after he got promoted, he ended up shaving his head, shaving the mohawk off because he wanted to look more like he fit in, right, as an assistant manager. And he was making all kinds of assumptions about his girlfriends. Like, you think I'm a sellout? You think I just, buy in and I'm going corporate? And really, he was just dealing with his own feelings about himself, and he didn't know how to feel about it. As she was trying to affirm him and say, no, that's not what I think at all. That's that's something you're coming up with. But I remember he went to the bedroom. He was really, really distraught. He was really freaking out over everything. And then he came out. And this was my first introduction to like hard drugs, because I had heard about them, but I've like only seen them in like movies and stuff, right? So like Blue Streak, or when you see like these big, huge plastic wrapped boxes of cocaine, like the big bricks. I don't even know what they actually call them, but and I'd seen like movies in New York set where, homeless people were doing crack cocaine. And so I didn't experience any of that, or I didn't realize that stuff was around me when I was living in very, very rural Arkansas. And so I was like, that's big city stuff. That didn't happen in Arkansas. But this guy came out of the bedroom and he had a light bulb in his hand. And it turns out, I found out later that, people usually, when they were smoking meth, they would use the light bulb. They would just take the end off that screws into the actual fixture. And they would use the glass and they would put it inside there and heat up the glass from the outside with the lighter. And so he had it and he had a burnt spot on it, of course. And then he tried to offer it to me. And I said, no, thank you. Still trying to figure out what it was that was in there. And then I didn't realize until later that it was methamphetamines. But I had seen, just from not only movies, but I remember like watching videos in like health class in high school where they would show scans of somebody's brain after they had been drinking for so long, or after they had been doing, hard drugs for so long, whether it was, meth or heroin or anything like that. Like it fully affects your entire body. And then, of course, there's the losing of the teeth. And then if you don't show physical appearance of using drugs, it definitely shows on the internal. So I didn't want any part of that. Always knew that. Never had any no temptations whatsoever to do it. But I turned it down. And, strangely enough, which is like, it's so strange to think about it now, but like when I was growing up, I, despised my father because he was a severe alcoholic, and he, just drank completely every day. I mean, he was such an alcoholic that he kept an extra case of beer underneath the seat of his truck for Sundays. And if you don't know, in Arkansas, like you can't buy alcohol, and like all the stores are not allowed to sell you alcohol on Sundays because it's the day of the Lord. And so Oklahoma sold on Sundays. And so us being in Central Arkansas, if it was Sunday and he ran out of his regular beer stash, he was not about to break into that extra case that was underneath his seats, because that was for complete emergencies. And let's say this is the situation he gave. If he's ever up in the mountains of the Ozarks and his truck breaks down and he can't find civilization anywhere nearby, he's going to have to camp and have to break in to open that emergency case of beer. And so rather than break into that, if he ran out of his regular stash, we would have to drive all the way to Oklahoma over the border so that he could buy alcohol that day. That's how bad of an alcoholic he was. And of course, there was a lot of abuse that was going on in the house and stuff. Well, I definitely want to talk about that in a future episode because there's some things that have happened recently that I definitely want to bring up and sort of share my relation to somebody that has experienced that addiction, right? And it's so hard to find anybody who doesn't have some sort of connection to someone who has overdosed or has had a substance abuse issue or is in recovery now. And so, strangely enough, I despised my father because of the alcohol, but then I thought it was okay for me to drink once I got out of the house and I moved into Conway. When I was hanging out with these people, I thought that it was okay to just get blackout drunk and it was all fun, but it unlocked a different part of me that I liked, which was this outward going person. Like it broke me completely out of my shell. Like I wasn't afraid to talk to strangers anymore. I wasn't to talk to anybody. And not only that, like it was the complete opposite extreme where I quit college because I couldn't make myself get out the door on day one to talk to strangers. To when I was drinking, it unlocked this part of me where I was the host of a late night show. You know what I mean? I was the entertainment and I am the host of this event. And we are going to talk to every single person in this room. We're going to try to make them laugh. We're going to try to entertain them. We're going to have conversation. And so like, it was a weird thing to where I liked that it brought that part out of me and I was super social all of a sudden. I wasn't just such an introvert. And I do remember, so going back to, fast forward a couple of years where I'm at this party of a house where these people that I knew, they were all sort of hanging out all the time in different, configurations. There was like 15, 20 of them. And so like these three would hang out with each other the most, but then these five would also hang. And so somehow I ended up at that house, of some of those people. And I, had gotten so blackout drunk that night that I went to the bathroom and I threw up all over the floor. And the owner of the house told me the next day that she walked in there and I was cleaning up the bathroom floor. And I was telling her, hey, don't tell the owners that I threw up all over the floor. They're going to get so mad. And she'd be like, I am the owner. And I'd be like, no, just don't tell her. And so that's how out of it I was. And so the next morning I wake up and I say morning, but it was almost noon the next day. Right. And there's people that are just passed out all over the floor. And I did not recognize them from the night before. I did not even remember having conversations. I'm sure I talked to every single one of them and had some sort of interaction with every one of them, but there were so many faces I didn't recognize and people that I just did not know were even there. Some of them I was familiar with, but I was, completely in it was out of the blue that these random people were just asleep on the floor. So, but I remember there was one guy that was there that I had talked to and I was like, well, I don't see him. Where's he at? And so I, walked around the house, couldn't find him anywhere. And then I went outside to my car to go get something and he was on the ground. And this is in Arkansas, the first day of the year. So January 1st in Arkansas, like it's usually cold outside. Like you can see your breath. There's frost on the ground if there's not snow. And it's like, it was just freezing cold outside. And this guy was sitting down on the ground with his back propped up against somebody else's car. And he had like this mud that was just like caked up around his face and across his chest that was just frozen to him. He had a jacket on, but he didn't have like a blanket or anything. And so I woke him up and told him to go inside and clean up and warm up because you're going to die of, frostbite or something out here. And anyways, turns out I hear the story later as people are waking up that somebody had gotten, he had passed out. Like he got passed out because he had been so drunk and passed out right there in that area. And then somebody else had gotten so drunk that they had they'd gone to the bathroom and they took rubber gloves and they gathered up all the feces and they splattered it across him because they thought it would be so funny and let it freeze to him. So he's waking up the first day of the year with feces splattered across him, frozen to his face and chest. And that's how he starts off the year. So I was just saying that that's the worst, New Year's event I can think of that I've experienced compared to, I tell you, that's that disgusting story just to tell you like what was like normal back then compared to, this year waking up and crossing over that threshold of, 2024 to 2025 in the presence of all these people who are decisively making a better decision for themselves. And they have been hard at work. They have overcome some of the hardest addictions to overcome, and they are still working on it. Some people were new in their journey. Some people were seasoned pros and coaching other people. But it was just, I don't know, it's beautiful to see everybody that sort of was there to help support each other. Even if you didn't know each other, you had that common ground. And so, thank you to Level Up for inviting me and to host such a crazy event like that, because it is so like, I never even knew that, sober celebrations like this happen for, New Year's. So the fact that that's, the fact that that's available is amazing. And I really enjoyed the events. There were like these awkward interactions. I could tell as people were coming in, like I said, a lot of people in recovery are kind of awkward because they're trying to figure out who they are, in this world while they're sober. Just like that part of me that I liked before, where I liked this social part of me that unlocked whenever I was drinking back then, right? So try to do that sober, which is what I do now, which I can relate because now that I've gone through my own process of coming out of my shell and establishing myself, I'm way more comfortable with who I am now than I ever was before. And so I wanted to see how all of these people were going to interact with each other that were also just now getting that line established and trying to figure out who they were and how they interact with each other. Like it's strange enough to try to talk to somebody that's never been through those situations, but it might be even harder or just a different level to try to, talk to other people who are also going through the same thing on a group, level. As far as it's different if you're talking to like 2 or 3 people, but if you have 80 people in the same room that are all going through recovery, and you don't know most of them, like it's kind of difficult to loosen up and to have like normal interactions. But they did a great job of having these little smaller events inside of the event. Like there was a freestyle rap contest. There was a freestyle dance contest. There was, talent and just everything else until like everybody had loosened up by the end to where when the balloons dropped from the ceiling, everybody was having so much fun together. And like, it felt like everybody knew each other. It was pretty amazing. With so much hope, you could see, the amount of hope that was there in the room and how much everybody had and how much it meant to everybody that they were going into a new year, that they were sober and that they were making those decisions to get control of their life. And so that was incredible. And so with people in recovery, we've recovered, Jimmy McGill several times, and I'm even wearing the hat now, right? So Jimmy McGill is a personality that needs that attention. So he's really comfortable on stage, but he sort of needs and he feeds off of, people watching and entertaining and interacting with him, right? So he's very much an extrovert, and he also has this need for attention. And that's great. Everybody, they're like the movement of peer support specialists. They need that. They need the spokesperson, right? But then you have like Casey Copeland, you've got MaryBeth Hill, which are people that will get on stage and they will talk. And they've got charisma, but it's not really they don't really crave it. They just know that it's necessary for them to get on stage and to talk. And that people need to hear those stories and they need to have information. So they go, okay, I don't want to get on stage, but okay, let's go do this. And then, there's most of the people that are in recovery that I've met. And I've met hundreds of people, just everybody from all these different organizations, that are going through, assisted living programs or through recovery programs. And the big takeaway that I get from all of them is that they're not really sure how to talk to people. They're not really comfortable with it. And as much as they would like to have those conversations, it's just, there's something, something mental that sort of stops them from having those conversations. And it's going to take training. It's going to take time. It's going to take, a lot of work of establishing who they are inside their own minds before they can, start doing it on the physical world. And so a lot of that comes from the affirmations and shared stories and the peer support specialists that can help, hold their hand on their way through recovery. But I say all that to say that a New Year celebration for sober people was incredible. And it was a great way to start the year. And it was a great way to, it really made me think about like, what are we doing here with this podcast? The purpose is to educate the public, but also to have these conversations and to shine a light on how recovery actually benefits everyone. And it doesn't just benefit the person going through recovery. It benefits all of society. Because when we only hear about people that don't go through recovery in the headlines, then the general view of the society of what people are that have gone through, substance abuse issues, we think they're all the same, and we sort of turn them into a template for all people who have been through substance abuse, right? And if that template is based on headlines of people committing crimes or going to prison because of their substance abuse issues, then we don't really hear about the ones that have recovered and become some of the pillars of their community. And so those are usually special features that, news organizations will put out every once in a while, but it's not controversial. So it doesn't really, it doesn't make the news nearly as much as it should. So, that's the point of this show. And that's the point of, so many other podcasts that are out there and, people who are social media influencers. It's not only raise awareness, but to let other people know, hey, we're here for you. We see you and we, want to share your stories and we want to help change society in the way that it operates. Right. It's an uphill battle, especially with, where we are in Arkansas right now, which is trying to build a new prison rather than figure out how to sort of bottleneck the amount of people that are being sent to prison and give alternative sentencing. Sentencing in Arkansas just got a lot harsher. And so I'm sure, talk about that sometime soon, because I really want to make just an episode about that, where we're talking about what does it mean to have this prison and why do we need it? And also what's going on with juvenile prisons, because I've been going into those for another podcast that I've been hoping produce. And it turns out that there are more juvenile prisons or detention centers, if you want to call them that, in Arkansas than there are, detention centers for adults. And the majority of them don't have the state employed staff that they need. And so they use private companies to run these detention centers. And so I definitely want to talk about that in the future. One more thing before we close out here. I had the opportunity to talk to MaryBeth Hill from the National Peer Recovery Alliance, and they have an event that they are bringing for the first time to Arkansas. If you don't know, the NPRA is a national organization that helps train peers into supporting other people that are going through recovery for each of the 50 states. It's pretty incredible. And now Jimmy McGill is now their director, and MaryBeth Hill also works for NPRA, and she is bringing this amazing event to Arkansas for the first time. So I had the chance to sit down and talk to her about that, what to expect. And here is that interview. So I'm sitting here with MaryBeth Hill from the NPRA, and a lot of things. You're sort of like the center of a spider web way in recovery goes, and especially peer recovery. And so, hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, good. So I'm excited to hear about, I guess, first of all, what is your role in the NPRA, and what is the NPRA?
Yeah. So actually, I actually work for the Archway Institute. We are a 501(c) nonprofit that works on national level recovery efforts. So far, we mainly operate out of Florida, Ohio, Kentucky, Virginia, and now we're coming to Arkansas. I also work with the Archway Institute also has a thing called the Division of Archway Institute, which is the National Peer Recovery Alliance, which basically what we do is unify the peer workforce. If you think about what a doctor does, across the states, right? Like a doctor's description is a doctor no matter which state he goes to. So we work very diligently trying to make sure that the role of a peer is the same across the United States.
Wow, that's a big job.
Yeah.
So
we're trying.
All 50 states?
Well, that's our goal. The long game, we're looking to be in every single state.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I guess how many of these organizations or peer recovery specialists are you overseeing now?
So right now our network is about 14,000, peers across the United States who follow MPRA, who are associated with MPRA, and we have affiliate directors currently in 6 states.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a huge job.
Big.
Yes. Now you yourself, are you a peer recovery specialist yourself?
So I was very fortunate. When the peer movement moved to the state of Arkansas in 2018, I was in the first round of people who became peer recovery specialists in the state of Arkansas.
Wow, okay. So one of the first.
One of the first.
One of the founding
there you go.
peer recovery specialists.
Yeah. Before we even really knew what peer recovery was or what our job was or who we were, I was in the first round.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I know that you guys have events that you're the brainchild of.
Yeah.
And so you're bringing this to Arkansas.
We are.
Which we know that there are plenty of resources that are needed for Arkansas, especially when it comes to recovery. So I'd love to hear about your event.
So as an organization, we try to keep it fun and interesting. And what can we do to better educate people who are in the peer workforce, but not just in the peer workforce. I don't know if you've ever heard the saying like the recovery ecosystem, right? So like that's everybody that encompasses the actual work that's getting done in the state of Arkansas. And we've been thinking like, what is the event that we want to do in Arkansas? Like, what do we want to do to bring and introduce the Archway Institute to Arkansas? We've been brainstorming. And I woke up one morning, it was like a Saturday morning, and I called Jimmy and I was like, hey, I have this idea. And, we started talking about it. We think about conferences, right, in the state of Arkansas. If you are in the recovery profession or mental health profession, what do conferences look like in Arkansas? They look like a snooze fest. Let's keep it real. I mean, like you're going in there and you're learning about boundaries and ethics and like all of these things that are pertinent to the job, right? Like you need to know about all these things, but why are we not learning about all the different pieces inside this ecosystem that keep it running, And not just state-ran facilities or state-ran organizations, but the faith-based organizations. Who's really heading, the reentry initiatives in our state? So we're bringing every little piece of the puzzle together in one house for one big event.
Wow. So does this include nonprofit organizations, of course, and there are some that are for-profit that still help in recovery. And then there are organizations like MPRA and those types of organizations as well. But also, are you bringing in lawmakers or law enforcement?
Yeah, we're working on that too. So hopefully the Attorney General's office is going to be there. That's the thing but these components are all key, in making sure that we're sustainable as a state in recovery, right? Like you need all these places. We need those for-profits. We need those treatment centers. We need the faith-based reentry. We need RCOs. We need all of these different pieces to make sure that if you're in recovery in Arkansas, that you have access to the resources that are provided. Because let's keep it real. Not everybody has insurance. Not everybody can afford to go to a for-profit facility, right? And not everybody has the same religious beliefs. Some people want to seek faith-based. Some want to seek holistic. Some people want to see best practice, So why not have every resource that we can have imaginable in one house together?
Yeah. The way I understand it is because I've never been like this podcast is sort of taken from the stance of somebody who's never had to go through recovery.
Yeah.
Because I've never had the substance abuse issues or anything like that. I think, it could have happened.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I definitely see the benefits whenever other people who have been through substance abuse go through recovery.
Right.
And how we all just sort of benefit off of, we reap the benefits off when somebody goes through recovery and they're successful through it, as opposed to we notice the headlines in the news articles that come out every time somebody doesn't do that, and then they end up getting into some sort of crime or something happens, right? So, but you mentioned RCOs. What does that stand for?
Recovery Community Organizations.
How does that differ from any other kind of organization out there that is for recovery?
So, a traditional RCO is led by people who are in recovery. And basically what that looks like is it is a hub of all-encompassing recovery resources, right? From peer support to meeting places, to outreach, advocacy. It's like a central location where you can find all those pieces right there for free.
Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It is.
And from it's another reason why I bring up the standpoint of like coming at it from somebody that's never been through recovery is I'm constantly learning from professionals like yourself in the field that you're working in, right? So you have the lived experience, but you also know what it's like to live on the other side and to successfully come out of that.
Yeah.
What are some ways that I guess, because this event that you've got coming up, it has me thinking about it, but like obviously people that would be interested in going this might be people who are interested in becoming peer recovery specialists, or people that might want to get involved in some way or form or another. What about for the people who have never had the issues, of substance abuse in the past?
Yeah.
Maybe by some magical happenstance, they've never had a family member or a husband or a wife or parents or children that have had any kind of substance abuse. And so they don't think that this affects them at all. But
it does.
I would love to hear how.
It does. Something that's so unique and different about this conference is that, I have been reaching out to a lot of second chance employers, right? And so like a lot of separate chance employers, a lot of different corporations that are in our community, really trying to bring them on board because have you ever heard the saying, like it takes a village to raise a child? Yeah. You know what I mean? But let's keep it real. Like that saying applies to addicts in recovery. We need everybody in the community to work together. And I know people are like, why should I help them? Why should I make a difference? But I didn't commit those crimes. Why should I be willing to do something to help these people? Because these people re-enter back into our communities, right? These people, I'm that person. You know what I mean? Like I am one of those people who came from a 17-year drug addiction, who had to re-enter back into society and learn how to live properly. And truly, if it wasn't for those second chance employers, right, who gave me an opportunity to go and to work and to prove myself that, hey, I am worthy of being here. Because let's keep it real, Ty, the disease of addiction, if it doesn't directly affect you, it impacts you in some way, shape, or form. And so that's the big thing about this conference is that we have literally brought in donors and sponsors, not just from the recovery community, but people in our community in general who genuinely believe in the power of recovery and thinking that, that we need to make a difference. It's so pertinent, right? Like, this conference is not just for the recovering addict, right? Like if you are a caregiver, a clinician, because let's keep it real, a lot of clinicians are not, recovering addicts. And you do have some that are, some that aren't. But we are opening up this conference to everybody, to the public, whether you're in recovery, whether you're not, if you're running a ministry at a church, it does not matter because we have all this resource in one house, right? Like one resource in one house where you can come and learn like how you can make a difference, right? Like how as a community can we make an impact to make sure that our economy and our recovery community and our community in general keeps thriving.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's encouraging to hear that more people are signing up that don't necessarily have an in on the recovery, but they believe in it.
Right.
Obviously, so some of the work that you brought forward is sort of, it speaks for itself then.
Yeah.
If people are believing in substance, or not substance abuse, but like the peer recovery portion of that. And saying that people who have been through this experience are the ones that are qualified to help other people also come out of the muck. Yeah. And raise themselves up from the ground.
For sure.
Encouraging to hear.
A couple of the sponsors that I've reached out to who are on board, and we haven't announced it yet, but I'll wait to do that. But, I was talking to the guy who was in charge of like their nonprofit donations, and he was like, a lot of my guys in the shop, they're felons. And it's crazy how when you just start talking to people, you start realizing, and I was like, what made you give them a chance? And he was like, literally, they are the hardest working individuals I've ever hired before. Yeah. The most loyal individuals I've ever hired before. And it did something inside of me, to understand that like, compassion is key. You know, like I understand, like people don't want to be compassionate about a bunch of criminals who've made a bunch of mistakes. I get that. But whenever you can find those select few people who understand, like, they can change, you know, and that's how we start making a difference. You know, that's how we as a whole, as a community, can start saying, like, if I can give you grace for these things, and I can show a little grace here.
Right.
And it just starts with those one people, you know, one person. It's crazy. I went to go buy a car at Kia, and shout out to Kia. You know, I went to go buy a car there, and that was another one who was like, we are second chance employers. And it's crazy how whenever you recover out loud, you know, it gives you this sense of like not being ashamed of who I am. Because I actually had a recovery shirt on, and he was like, you know, what is that? And I was like, you want the long version, the short version? He's like, well, they're detailing your car. And I just told him about myself. And he was like, I have successfully re-entered society after incarceration too. Awesome. And I was like, man, kudos to you, you know? And so it's just being able to be that voice in that community to show that, like, we can change as individuals, you know, like we don't have to live in that stigma anymore that once you're a criminal, you're always a criminal, because that's not the case, you know?
I think that in itself sort of fights against that a common thought that, you know, people have of, well, if you've been to prison, you're always going to go back. And where our recidivism rate, you know, shows in Arkansas especially, but like and if you think that this doesn't affect you, it's somehow like you just give a great example. They're the people that are selling you your car. Not only that, but I mean, like, of course, there's everything from the higher echelons of Hollywood. You know, Robert Downey Jr. is, of course, for sure testimony of that, and as people in politics, all the way down to people that work at the gas station, right? And so you're going to encounter them at some point in the day, and you do benefit, so one way or another, off of somebody else's recovery. For sure. So maybe these other people that don't have like the experience, but they are sponsoring your event, like what do they stand to get out of your events?
Community fellowship, you know, literally there's, you know, we tell them, you know, in that part of the sponsorship package, it's like, hey, we will promote you. You know, we will give you some, you know, web space, and we'll put you on all our social media. And one of the best responses I got from that, he was like, we don't want anything from you but for you to keep doing what you're doing, you know, and that touched me, right? Because that's what this is about. It's about community. It's about family. That's one of the things about the Archway Institute that I love. You know, so backstory about us, we were created like 11 years ago, and Dan and Jan Stuckey, they had a son who was an addict, and they did not know how to find resources to help him. You know, I remember Dan telling me they spent like $150,000 in 1 year sending him to treatment, sending him to do this, and nothing was working. And they did not know who to reach out to help. So they created the nonprofit, the Archway Institute. And it's almost like if I had to describe it, right, it's like a hub, kind of like an RCO, but it's literally in all of these states. And it's not just for the addict who is struggling, it is for the caregiver who doesn't know how to help their loved ones. We do free peer support. We literally raise money to give it away. And like, how amazing is that? You know, these people who literally have no motive or intention other than to see families heal from substance use. It's really amazing whenever you start working in this field and you start seeing like how, like you just said, how addiction touches so many different lives. Like, it does not know a race, a gender, a social class. You know what I mean? It doesn't. But how we can work together as a whole to continue to help heal our communities.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. When we've talked, even on this podcast, talked to everybody from, you know, people that started slamming heroin in high school to, you know, stay-at-home suburban soccer moms that got addicted to their depression pills. You know what I mean? And so, like, it covers all. Like I said, there are no barriers in this respect.
Yeah. Listen, I was in federal prison, Ty, and you know, you see a whole different people there, right? Like, and I was so fortunate to go through this treatment program that they called RDAP, and literally, like, I would see, like you said, housewives or people who were actually corporate America who became addicted and started stealing to fund that habit. Yeah. And then now here we are, you know, she's 70 years old at federal prison with me, who was a drug dealer. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, like, it just, you know, it all has, it affects everybody. And, you know, so it's amazing that we get to do the work that we do today to make sure that we can help whoever they are, whether it's, you know, the person that's homeless on the street, right, or if it's that corporate America executive who doesn't know how to use his voice to reach out. And typically, that with the disease of addiction, sometimes that makes it even harder for those people who are on that side of the fence to say, hey, I have a problem, and so to be able to be an organization, to be a voice, to say, hey, it doesn't matter. We don't care where you come from or what you're going through or what your social status is or where you are in life. Like, we just want to be a voice and we want to help you through this journey.
That's awesome. What are the effects that you hope to see past this event? Like, that somebody cooking out of it? What are some of the ways that you're going to measure?
So, what's crazy? So like I told you, the Archway is national. And so we've actually talked about this event, and we've talked about it in numerous board meetings. And we've had numerous affiliates in different states who were like, hey, we want to do this in our state. Like, we want to be able to do this in our state. So that was something that was super exciting to me. Like, why can we not go to every single state and let's bring it all together, one house, one time, so that way and let's keep it real. So recovery is ever evolving, you know what I mean? It's always evolving. And so there's always new different programs, new regulations, new guidelines, new things that are happening every year that we need to make sure that we're staying up to date on what's going on, and not only that though, like, it doesn't always have to be about these big places, you know what I mean? Like these big corporate places or these big, these big chain places. I want to see even the little guys, the ones who are just starting out. Like, this is their chance to shine too, because they are just as valid as the next person is. So
that's awesome. Yeah, I really like that a lot.
Yeah.
So as far as, whenever you're measuring, past this event, you've had eyes on, the people who this is obviously going to face. So that's helpful. And so are you hoping that more states come in for this event and sort of learn how to do this and how to bring in?
So we were really super blessed. We got the go ahead from our CEO to bring in all of our other state affiliates into this event. So that is the starting point, right? So we will have affiliate directors from MPRA from all of our states coming into this event to really see, and I'm not saying this because I'm partial, but Arkansas really has something jumping as far as recovery goes. Like, I have been to lots of different states and there's some great recovery stuff going. But when I say that Arkansas as a whole, we kind of got it together, you know what I mean, for the most part. And so I'm hoping that whenever we bring these people into the state of Arkansas, they can really see how we utilize each other, because it takes every piece, right? It takes that person who is a clinician at that treatment center. It takes that pastor. It takes that person that's running that sober living. It takes that RCO. It literally takes us together to make sure that we can continue to be sustainable. And so as they come in and see how we're doing this, my biggest hope is that we can start moving from state to state and having the same event everywhere.
That's amazing. Yeah. I'm sure it can happen.
Yeah, hopefully. We're going to make it happen. Yeah, listen, I have that hustler is still inside of me. I mean, the same way that I hustled for those drugs, I promise you I hustled for the recovery. And so, we're going to make it happen.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
For people who don't have those, like I said, the substance abuse issues and all this stuff, but they want to help, what is the best way that they can help?
Man, literally when I say get involved, that's the biggest thing. You think, like, a lot of times, like, this is not my place in life, or this is not something I want to help out with. I don't know how to go about it. Just get involved. This is a perfect event for you to come in, and we have vendors coming from all over the state, from counseling services, from mental health services. My sister, who is a mental health nurse practitioner, her business will be there, because let's keep it real. A lot of people see therapists, so I mean, like, when I say that you're literally going to have access to a resource wherever you're at, visit our website, the Archway Institute. We always have different things going on, different ways to help, volunteering. We have people who volunteer from all different facets of life, so definitely do something like that.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to it. Anything else that I haven't asked you about that you want to?
So it's March 3rd. Yes, it's March 3rd. We are having it at the Wyndham Hotel in North Little Rock. If you go to our website, which is thearchwayinstitute.org, on the homepage, you will see the little icon. It's the Archway Institute Marches Forward. There is a $25 registration fee. However, what does that $25 go to? You get a free lunch. Every bit of money that we raise in the state of Arkansas, it goes right back out to the community. If you are a professional in the field and you're looking for any kind of CEUs, to continue your education, we are offering CEUs. There's going to be snacks. There's going to be drinks. And not only that, we have some powerhouses who are coming in. We're bringing Stephanie Robinson in from Ohio as one of our keynotes. And she is an amazing individual, powerful testimony, really doing some great things on the national level for recovery. So we are so super excited to have her. So we hope to see y'all there.
That's awesome. It's also the Wyndham on Riverfront, right?
Yep.
Right for the river, so you get a good view as well.
Yeah, it's centrally located, great location. So yeah, definitely come out.
Thank you again to MaryBeth for sitting down and talking about your amazing event that's going to be coming up. I'm really excited to go there. There's so many events that are happening this year regarding recovery that I'm pretty excited about, especially for this podcast. I'm going to Oklahoma soon for the Pathways of Innovation event that's going to be happening in Oklahoma City. I'll be there and covering that, doing some recordings with some of the people that are attending and speaking, but also be on the floor and taking photos and interviewing people on the floor as well. So that'll be a special episode that we put out, and I really appreciate them for reaching out to me and helping me get there. I will have more reports about that event before time to go there to Oklahoma. And if you want to support this podcast, I think the best way to do that is to go to YouTube, hit subscribe on our channel. If you can't find it, search for Long-Term Podcast. Long-Term is all one word. I know that that's not how you spell it, but that's how I spell it for the podcast because I thought that it was a better fit. Okay, so Long-Term Podcast. And if that doesn't bring it up, put Ty King. You can put my name in there. For some reason, your YouTube makes it difficult to find even when I'm searching for it, and I own the channel. So, also, if you are watching the video and you like to support, please go to any of your podcasting platforms and subscribe there. Leave a review. Please share these episodes with people you think might be able to benefit. And we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear your stories. If you'd like to be on the show, then we would love to talk to you about your story and your relation to recovery. And you can reach me at Ty King, which is TIKING at arkansaspodcasters.org. I'd be happy to talk to you and get you on the show. And if you want to support us even more, we're going to have more opportunities to do that. And we'll announce that. And I'll have all the links inside of our show notes of each one of our episodes. So thank you so much for listening to this one. And we will see you in the next episode.